Welcome back to Kings of the North. Same as always, but all new. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis in the same room together. If you're listening to this on a podcast instead of watching on YouTube, first of all, we'd invite you to try the YouTube thing. But how would you describe this, Bill, to people who are only hearing and not seeing the magnificence of us in the same room?
It's a sight to behold. I hope you like gray. That'll change.
It'll change.
We have grand ideas to change the backdrop behind us. It will be changed by the time we actually start doing the show live. This is we're testing some stuff out. We got to figure this whole thing out before we go live, starting the first week of the season. So, but it's good to be in the same room. I think it leads to better conversation when you're in the same room.
We'll see.
We'll see. Not to set the bar too high.
August 26th, 5 days a week, live show. That's when it starts, Monday, August 26th at noon. We hope you guys join us then. I never saw the Saw movies, but I imagine maybe they were in a room like this, that if somebody was going to like tie me to the wall and say you have to cut your leg off to get out or whatever, like it might be in a gray walled room.
We're not far.
No.
Not far from that. Yeah.
But we're going to get some stuff. But this is what we're headed to. It's been a continued evolution over the last year, what we called sort of a soft launch for Kings of the North. And now we're going to be all the way there. And for the next hour, we're just going to talk about that. We're going to talk about launching a show and paint. No, we're not. We're going to talk about football. We're going to talk about three different things. One is freshmen who could make an impact in Northern football. True freshmen, which I think is an important distinction. Then we're going to give our 10 things we're super excited about for this college football season. Bill made a list of 5. I made a list of 5. And then I had an interview with Brett Ciancia, the owner and author of Pick 6 Previews. And we talked about some underrated teams and overrated teams relative to the AP poll that came out on Monday. So I'm excited when we get to our, hey, what are you excited about for college football? But we want to start with these Northern Impact freshmen. And there's 2 that jump off the list. Yeah, we really have a top 4. Maybe all 4 are pretty close to huge. But I think this conversation, we're going to go Ohio State guy, Nebraska guy, Colorado guy, Notre Dame guy. And then we're going to talk about some other people, a Penn State guy, a Michigan State guy, a Syracuse guy, an Iowa guy. There's some other guys who have a chance to make an impact as well. But we're going to start with Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. You've been at all the Ohio State practices that you could watch so far. I have some numbers about relating him to previous grade Ohio State receivers, to true freshman receivers in major college football the last couple of years. But does that not matter because Jeremiah Smith is breaking the mold?
He's definitely breaking the mold. Whatever that bar is, he's going to reset it. So going back to the spring, Ohio State has, I think, had open, I want to say 9 practices.
Okay.
And in all of them, he's done something crazy. And it's not merely that. It's also they do a thing at Ohio State called Iron Buckeye, right? Where they give an award to guys who basically just handle their business the right way in the offseason. And he is the first freshman to ever get that. And it's not a case of Ohio State just trying to appease a guy who they've really had to fight to get into the class. I truly believe he's earned all of that. And you ask Ryan Day questions about him, and Ryan Day is hesitant to say anything because he is excited about the possibilities of this kid as a freshman. For as good of receiver run as Ohio State has been on, and some of these guys have broken out young, most of them as sophomores, like Garrett Wilson broke out as a freshman. Jeremiah Smith is something different. And you spend 30 minutes in an Ohio State practice and you pick up on that immediately.
And the difference here is at places like Ohio State, at places like Georgia and Alabama and Oregon and Texas and LSU and Michigan, like the very most talented places, sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are, because there might not be an opportunity for you. We heard a lot of great things about Marvin Harrison Jr. as a freshman, and he basically did nothing until the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Because he had Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Jackson Smith and Jigba ahead of him. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? We saw Chase Young as a freshman at Ohio State, and he was 5th in a 4-man defensive end rotation because he had Nick Bosa and Sam Hubbard and Tyquan Lewis and Jalen Holmes ahead of him. And what are you going to do? There is excellence and rare talent tied to opportunity here.
Definitely.
That is a little bit rare for the Ohio State receiver room. If Marvin Harrison Jr. had stayed at Ohio State like so many of the other guys had, this conversation would be different. But Jeremiah Smith's going to start, no doubt about it.
He's definitely going to start. The only returning starter Ohio State has at receiver is Emeka Ibuka, who will primarily play in the slot. I think he might move around some more. Carnell Tate is a guy who played a decent amount last year as a freshman. Think about like Carnell Tate, I think played 250 or so snaps on offense last year as a true freshman. And that to us was like, whoa, look at this guy breaking through as a true freshman. Like that's hard to do at Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith will dwarf those numbers. There's an open spot for him in this offense this year, and he's absolutely going to start.
I looked at the last 32 years of Ohio State receivers. They've had 18 receivers go in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft in the last 32 years. And that's not counting 2 Ohio State guys who were drafted in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft as receivers, even though they weren't receivers at Ohio State. That's Curtis Samuel, a running back at Ohio State, and Braxton Miller, a quarterback at Ohio State. The other guys, the last 32 years, 18 receivers taken in the top 3 rounds, only 4 of them as true freshmen. Before I let me interrupt myself here. I think the differentiation between a true freshman and a redshirt freshman is vast. I think it is a canyon. It is the difference of I just got here and I'm still learning where the bathrooms are versus I've had a whole year of bulking up in the weight room, at training table, practice, film room, all that. So I have this to me is a true freshman conversation only.
100%. Everything you said is correct. And also now you can play 4 games and still be a redshirt freshman. Like I was looking through some guys for this list. I was like, oh, that guy's a freshman. No, he's not. He played in 4 games last year. Actually, you can play in 5 because the bowl games don't count. So you can play in 4 regular season games and a postseason game.
The playoff games don't count.
And maintain your freshman. Now you can, and maintain your freshman eligibility. To your point, is a very, very different conversation.
So there are only 4 Ohio State of those 18 receivers who are top 3 rounds. Only 4 of them as true freshmen had more than 200 receiving yards. David Boston had 29 catches for 430 yards as a true freshman. Ted Ginn Jr. had 25 catches for 359. Devin Smith had 14 catches for 294. And Garrett Wilson had 30 catches for 432, which I think is the Ohio State true freshman record for receiving yards. I'm not 100% sure about that. Do you know the answer?
I don't. It's not available, but that has to be.
Right? It has to be. It's not somebody from 1954.
Yeah, right.
When they threw like 17 passes the whole year. Yeah. Nobody had more than 432 receiving yards. So that's the threshold. Here's what other guys did. Marvin Harrison Jr., 11 catches, 139 as a true freshman. And it was like all in the Rose Bowl. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 10 for 49 as a true freshman. Chris Olave, who came on late and mattered in the Michigan game, caught a touchdown in the Michigan game, 12 for 197. Michael Thomas, NFL superstar, 3 catches, 22 yards as a true freshman. Like, this is what we're talking about. Santonio Holmes, Super Bowl MVP, redshirt.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is, guys don't play. Terry Glenn, 8 for 156. Joey Galloway, 8 for 167. Like, guys don't play. So I think we have to keep that in mind, except do we throw it all out the window? Because all of that has no relevance to Jeremiah Smith.
I don't think much of it has relevance to Jeremiah Smith. And I was actually going to ask you, I won't make you do this math on the fly. If you added all that up, could Jeremiah Smith do that this year?
Yeah. Are you asking if he?
But it's like, it's like 80 catches. If it's like 150 catches, obviously not. But if it's like around 100 catches and like around 1,200 yards.
If he has 1,200 yards as a true freshman, I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Let me get some comparisons for you in recent college football history. I was looking for true freshmen who are among the top 100 receivers in the country in receiving a game. Last year, Kevin Concepcion from NC State was 73rd at 64.5 yards per game. It was the ACC Rookie of the Year. He was a 3-star recruit, number 567 in the country. Does that as a true freshman. Pretty awesome. Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech, 95th in the country last year. Evan Stewart, I think, is a decent comparison, was the number 2 receiver recruit in the country, borderline 5-star in 2022 at Texas A&M. He transferred to Oregon now. He had 53 for 649.
It's pretty good.
He was 65 yards per game, was 80th in the country. I think that's a decent comparison. And then the one that kind of stands out, 2021, Xavier Worthy at Texas, 4-star recruit, number 8 receiver in his class. It's a true freshman at Texas. 62 catches, 981 yards, 12 touchdowns, was 33rd in the nation at 82 receiving yards per game. But he had 36 more catches and 604 more receiving yards than anybody else on that Texas team.
Yeah.
It was year 1 of Sark, and they went 5-7. So that was sort of like, well, let's throw the true freshman into the deep end. We don't have anybody else, and we're not expected to be good. That is very different from the Jeremiah Smith conversation. So, and he didn't get to 1,000. Now, we're talking about a playoff run with Ohio State, probably. Do you really think 1,200 yards is on the table for Jeremiah Smith as a true freshman?
No.
You just said it in this room. The walls are listening.
Is it possible? Sure. I do think it's possible. I don't think Ohio State will have a similar volume of passing in its offense that we've seen the last couple of years, which impacts that obviously. And Ohio State doesn't need Jeremiah Smith to be what Xavier Worthy was for that Texas offense a couple of years ago, right? Like Emeka Ibuka is going to get the ball a lot. Carnell Tate's going to get the ball a lot. They're going to throw it to the running backs. They're going to throw it to the tight end a little bit. So I don't know that the volume's there for Jeremiah Smith to quite match that.
Do you think Jeremiah Smith leads Ohio State in receiving yards?
No, I think Emeka Ibuka will, closer to the quarterback. And
they've always, the Ohio State offense has always kind of leaned on those slot guys when they have a chance to. So we're just laying it down. I think having the most successful true freshman season of any Ohio State receiver is practically a guarantee. I think dwarfing what a typical true freshman in a power conference offense does is absolutely there. I might be at like 800 yards, because I think there are going to be some situations too where I think he could have like 300 or 400-yard games and then also have a couple games where he has like 2 catches for 12 yards.
Yeah. I could also see him as a guy who has maybe a lot of touchdowns because he's a big red zone target, but maybe the overall yardage and receptions are not quite as prolific as you're imagining. Like something like he has 48 catches on the year, but like 17 of them were touchdowns kind of thing. Like I think that could be on the table.
This is also a Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, Trevion Henderson, Chip Kelly, Ryan Day conversation, which is how much they want to throw, what their ability is to throw compared to their ability to run. So I think that is tamped down compared to a typical Ohio State offense, but get back to me in 2025 when I think Jeremiah Smith might have 2,000 receiving yards.
From Julian Sayin.
When everybody's gone.
Yes, I think you're right.
Just saying. All right. I think this is a fairly similar conversation when it comes to Dylan Raiola, the Nebraska quarterback, where I have a bunch of stats and I'm going to read them and then we might throw them away because I don't know that what Dylan Raiola is expected to do, anticipated to do, capable of doing in the Nebraska offense as a true freshman with his experience. There are more comparisons than there are for Jeremiah Smith, but there are not a ton. And I think they're just going to say, here you go. And I expect that he'll be ready to be a very productive college football quarterback from the jump.
I expect that too. I do wonder how much they might try to protect him. Well, they're also, I don't know that they're an offense kind of built to just like line it up and run the ball and try to protect their young quarterback either, right? It does kind of feel like he's going to have to make this thing go, no, with the way they're set up. So I think he's ready for it. I don't want to. It's hard, that position, man. Like for a true freshman, but guys have done it in the past. Matt Rule, I think, is an experienced enough coach to kind of know how to handle it, but it is not a situation, at least in my estimation, where a true freshman quarterback is stepping into a turnkey offense with a lot of proven playmakers who are going to elevate him. I think this is the other way around. They are looking at this freshman to elevate the offense.
So this has been unusual. On CFB stats, looking at true freshmen who were among the top 100 passers in yards per game in college football. True freshmen. Last year in 2023, there were none. Nobody in the top 100 was a true freshman. In 2022, the only one was A.J. Swan of Vanderbilt. I don't know that that's... Want to make a Vanderbilt, Nebraska? Nebraska is the Vanderbilt of the North. That's what they all say.
Sure.
2021, there was only one guy. You know who it was?
2021 was
famous.
Caleb
Williams at Oklahoma, who took over in the middle of the year. 2020, there were 4. Jaden DeLaura at Washington State, Will Rogers at Mississippi State, Jeff Sims at Georgia Tech, and Will Howard at Kansas State.
Oh,
believe it or not.
Nice.
And then 2019, there were 6. And actually, I think there are some really good comparisons here. Keaton Slovis at USC, Sam Howell at North Carolina, Jaden Daniels at Arizona State, Heisman winner. Ryan Helinski at South Carolina, Bo Nix at Auburn, and Max Duggan at TCU. So of all those guys I listed, there were 12. Here are the guys who won the starting job out of camp. Because some of these guys, like Keaton Slovis, didn't win the job, and JT Daniels got hurt for USC in the first half of the first game, and he took over.
Yeah.
There were other guys who kind of, like Will Howard, there was an injury thing. Will Rogers at Mississippi State took over in week 2 because of an injury. Okay. The guys who won the job: Jaden DeLore at Washington State, Jeff Sims at Georgia Tech, Sam Howell at North Carolina, Jaden Daniels at Arizona State, and Bo Nix at Auburn. I think Bo Nix at Auburn, it might be a good comparison here. This is like an established program that expects to win, but is also like handing it off to a big time freshman QB.
Yeah. There's also Bo Nix was a legacy, and Dylan Raiola is as well, not a legacy quarterback, but there's a come save us element there.
Yeah.
I think with both those guys, right?
And Bo Nix that year was 217 of 377, completed 57% of his passes, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 196 passing yards per game, which was 91st in the country. And Auburn went 9-4. I think Nebraska would take that.
I think Nebraska would definitely take
And I don't think that sounds crazy.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's on the table. That doesn't seem like too lofty of a goal. That actually, for Dylan Raiola's talent, like, because I don't know, Bo Nix was a well-regarded quarterback prospect. He was not talked about, I think, quite in the same terms that Dylan Raiola has been talked about throughout his recruitment, right? So I think there's reason to believe that Dylan Raiola could be even better than that, right?
Sam Howell, true freshman, 259 of 422, 61% completion, 280 passing yards per game, 16th in the country, 38 touchdowns, 7 picks. They just said, do this. Yeah. North Carolina went from 2-9 the year before to 7-6 that year. I actually think that's a little much to ask. 38-7. Some of these quarterbacks, when you look, they have low touchdown and low interception numbers because, again, they're not asking too much. 38-7 is like, geez, is Sam Howell going to be freaking Tom Brady? Like, that's crazy for a true freshman.
That's the Phil Longo offense, right? That's a high volume passing offense that I think Nebraska will have a little more balance to it than that.
Jaden Daniels, 61% completion, 245 yards per game. Arizona State went 8-5 his true freshman year. Future Heisman winner. Keaton Slovis, when he took over at USC, 72% passing, 3,500 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, 9 picks, 292 passing yards per game. USC went 8-5. And that's not Lincoln Riley. USC.
No, I was going to say it's Clay Helton, right?
So this is like, there's some guys here that it hasn't happened in a while. The idea that there was not a single one last year, not a single one, and that it was a Vanderbilt guy in 2022 is like, okay. And again, I'm talking power conference here. It is rare. There are some comparisons in there. I think Dylan Raiola will lead Nebraska to a winning record, and for a team that has not gone to a bowl game in a bit, that's a big deal.
Yep.
And have some outstanding games, have some rough games, but overall, I think something like 25 touchdowns and 10 picks and 240 passing yards per game. I think that'd be a very reasonably achievable high level season.
I agree with all that. He's not a super dynamic runner too. He's like more of a scrambler than he is a runner, I think, but he might be able to add some rushing production on top of that. And he is, for everything I said about this not being a turnkey offense, it's not like the cupboard's bare either. There's some stuff around him. I know they did just lose an offensive lineman, but they still have 3 guys returning who have starting experience. They went out of their way to, I think, beef up the receiver core a little bit this offseason. So they're trying to help them. There's stuff there. There's probably, without going back through and looking through all those situations, if you were to rank like, okay, who has the best assortment of skill around them of all these freshmen you talked about from 2019 and like Dylan Raiola now, I don't think he's last, right? I think he's maybe middle of the pack. So there's some stuff there. I can see it. I think around 250 a game, which is like the number I have ingrained in my head from Urban Meyer about balanced offense, 250. I think that's probably what Nebraska wants to be this year. So if that's the yardage, and I think if you could add in rushing something like 30-ish touchdowns, I think is right and fair and achievable.
All right, let's do another guy. Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa, linebacker at Notre Dame. Big recruiting win for them out of California. And it feels like they want to find a way to get him on the field as a true freshman.
Yeah, which could be playing a decent amount of Mike linebacker, right? That's an open competition they have. They're trying to replace JD Bertrand there. There's a bunch of like younger / inexperienced guys, including Kyngstonn, trying to get that job. And I saw Al Golden say like they're giving him the helmet communication in camp. Like they're giving him the opportunity to show that he can handle being this team's starting Mike linebacker. I don't think he's quite there yet. But then I also see that they have him doing some stuff with the defensive line and pass rushing. So if he's not the Mike linebacker, there are other ways to get him on the field. He just seems like he's a pretty versatile, explosive guy who's made a serious impact in a short time in South Bend. And he's gonna play this year. Whether or not he's a day one starter, I don't know. I'd probably say no at this point, but I think he's going to play a significant amount of snaps for that defense.
Their linebackers coach was talking about the idea of maybe like 5 linebackers in the mix for their spots. He was saying we don't even have starters right now. So he's in that mix. And you like the idea of he's a future quarterback of the defense as a Mike linebacker, but also let's find a way to get him on the field and use his current skill, even if he's not ready to run a whole defense every snap. I like when teams talk like this.
Definitely.
I like when teams are like into getting talent on the field, however they have to do it, even if they have to get creative.
Yeah, I think some play. I talk about that a lot with Ohio State. Like maybe they're sometimes reluctant to embrace that. I think maybe because they have maybe more depth of talent than a place like Notre Dame does. But it's an opportunity too. Like we talked about with Jeremiah Smith. If Notre Dame's linebacker room were not turning over the way it is, maybe we're not having this conversation, but there's an opening in practice for Kyngstonn to show that he's able to handle it while running with the first team defense. And then from that comes other opportunities potentially to, help the team as a third down guy or whatever that might be. So seems like he's taking advantage of it. And I'm glad that Notre Dame is seemingly keeping an open mind about how to get him on the field.
You got to do 2 things at once. Like you're establishing a foundation that's going to allow him to be an every down, super impactful player down the line, but you're also finding a way to get him on the field so he can help you right now while he's learning, which is just good coaching.
Definitely. But also it doesn't sound like they have very many concerns about his ability to handle the job now, right? On Mike linebacker. So I don't know. I check back in with us like 4 or 5 weeks into the season. Maybe this guy is their starting Mike.
Yeah, that could be. The other guy who sort of stands out is Jordan Seaton, the left tackle from Colorado. He says he turned down $1 million NIL offers elsewhere to go to Colorado. He's going to be the starting left tackle at Colorado. Colorado says they've never had that for a true freshman before to be the starting left tackle. That's the kind of thing. Who was the first guy at a place like Ohio State to do that? Orlando Pace. This is what you're talking about on the offensive line with true freshmen. It's just unusual, but he is there to be a bit of a savior. He's eaten fish.
Yeah.
Talking about eating fish, he said he's down from 334 to 312. Sometimes you have guys like this, younger guys, why it's hard to play on the offensive line. They're trying to bulk up. Like he's coming down and getting more athletic in the process. Like he could have gone a lot of places. Everywhere wanted him. Colorado needed him in a desperate way. And I think he may be, Dylan Raiola and Jordan Seaton, they're going to play each other in week 2. I already did that show by myself, in my hotel room. Nebraska, Colorado, week 2. I'm not saying it's Dylan Raiola versus Jordan Seaton, but I am going to say it right now. But both those programs need these guys. But do you think Jordan Seaton's up to the task?
I think so. I'm glad to hear that he has changed his body composition a little bit. I think that's really hard for freshmen. It's not even sometimes a matter of do you weigh enough or do you weigh too much. Is the weight distributed the right way for you to play an entire college football season as a college football player? And that's like, I guess, like a baby fat kind of conversation. But it does seem like he's prepared himself to do it. He's incredibly athletic. Like probably play basketball if he wanted to. The only thing I worry about is he is stepping into a situation where there is zero offensive line continuity. Everyone is brand new. I would feel much better about starting a true freshman at left tackle if he was playing next to 3 or 4 guys who are used to playing next to each other. So we'll see. And like as an individual, I am very high on Jordan Seaton. I wonder if he might get exposed a little bit early on, only because all 5 of those guys are going to be trying to figure out how to play with each other. And by the way, they open up with some tough games.
And Dion told him you can't play like a freshman.
Yeah. So I mean, he took on the challenge, right? He could have gone elsewhere and perhaps even played early. but wouldn't have had quite this kind of spotlight on him. So
Yeah.
like Jordan Seaton knew what he signed up for, and I think he's probably ready for it. It's just it makes an already difficult situation that much more difficult when you're trying to slide into a line that like where everyone's trying to figure out how to play together.
All right. So those are the big four, I think, to keep your eye on from true freshmen in the North. Let's run through a couple other names, including the guy, the true freshman with the most pressure on him in Northern college football. Are you buying it that this guy is under the gun?
Is it Rhys Dakin?
Yeah, it's Rhys Dakin.
It's Rhys Dakin.
Punting time.
Yeah. I mean, he is, what is Tory Taylor is the best punter college football has seen in the last 15 years or so. I don't know. Like he's one of the best we've ever seen do it. And now here comes Rhys Dakin from the same town in Australia to replace the legend. Incredibly difficult. He has more pressure on him than anybody else on this list, without a doubt.
But he'll also probably be fine. Everybody went to the Iowa like open scrimmage or whatever, and they were just like, dude, this guy has a huge leg. And like, what else is there? Don't drop the snap. He'll be fine.
Those Pro Kick Australia guys are usually ready to go from the jump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them.
It's basically all of college football. Remember, he was like, oh, this is cool. You got a guy from Melbourne to punt for you. Like, oh, what's this? Pro Kick Australia? It's like every punter in college football.
Yeah.
Is from Pro Kick Australia.
Yeah, that feels like maybe like a Disney Plus movie of like this poor little like Midwestern punter who's trying to get a college scholarship, and all these evil Australians come over and keep taking the spots.
I want to do that story now. I want to go to like the Cole kicking camp next year and talk to American punters about how much they hate Australia.
Let's start a war. Let's start a punting war. Because it seems like you can't paint with a broad brush. It's not like all Australian punters are cool. But the ones that I have talked to seem like swell fellas.
I've yet to meet one who wasn't cool.
But I'm totally interested in casting them as villains.
Yeah, definitely. You should see the one at Ohio State, Nick McClarty. I don't think he's going to punt this year. He looks like the Terminator. He's 6'7", 250 pounds. And if he punts the ball 10 times, like 7 of them are going to go sideways. But the one he connects on, man, it goes like 90 yards. It's insane. Yeah.
Yeah. We talked to our buddy Mason Fletcher from Cincinnati at Big 12 Media Days, and then I was at a Cincinnati practice. Someone was like, if you love Mason, you think he's crazy. His brother's crazier. So his brother's the transfer from Arkansas, was going to redshirt at Cincinnati, then punt for 2 more years. The Colorado guy we talked to is an Australian. They're everywhere. So keep the name, but like Rhys Dakin is going to be famous. Everybody in college football by the end of last year knew who Tory Taylor was.
Yeah, and
you're going to know who Rhys Dakin is.
I can't recall if Tory Taylor got 4 years at Iowa. Maybe he did.
But that is more the plan, isn't it? A lot like it's like you only need to recruit a punter like every 4 years if you actually hit on it.
Yeah, yeah. But no, Rhys Dakin, he'll have a Ray Guy award before he's done there.
Yeah. By then it'll be renamed the Tory Taylor Award. So he will win the Tory Taylor Award. Yeah. Nick Marsh at Michigan State, I think has a chance to be the second best true freshman receiver. There's a couple of names, but second best true freshman receiver in the North behind Jeremiah Smith, and it seems like he's going to get a chance at Michigan State. Yeah,
I think he could be. It seems like they like his frame. He's like a bigger bodied guy, and also excited about the Aiden Childs is not a freshman, but he sort of feels like one. He played last year, and I think there's a lot of excitement, at least in East Lansing, about Aiden Childs and Nick Marsh like being able to kind of grow together over a couple of years and what that might look like down the road.
Love when that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
Marcellus Barnes, cornerback at Syracuse, was a top 200 national recruit. This was Fran Brown at work, getting this guy to begin with, and seems like maybe he has a chance to get on the field for the Orange right away.
Another guy who like stepping into a good opportunity, right? There's an opening there at corner for him to play. I when he was a recruit or like coming out, there was some talk like, oh, maybe he's a nickel, maybe he can play safety, but he can definitely play outside corner too. And it seems like he might get an opportunity to do that at Syracuse, and it'll be a good, I think, kind of litmus test for the type of guys that Fran Brown wants to bring into the program. If you go like flip a guy like that and all of a sudden he starts for you right away, it's like, okay, we'll learn a little more about what Fran Brown is about and the kind of guys he wants to bring in here.
At Kansas, guy off the edge, DJ Warner is getting a lot of talk as a true freshman there. Twitch, freak, bend. And this is what words teammates and coaches are using, but also saying he's mature. I think this is going to be one of those where DJ Warner might have 8.5 sacks this year or something, because at the very least, if he's mature and can handle his business, which is what the word is from people at Kansas, then He's got natural athleticism. He's one of the higher rated recruits at Kansas in a long time. You don't get guys like that through there every day. Get him on the field. I think Lance Leipold's going to do that.
He is the highest rated recruit at Kansas in the internet era. 247 Sports, 24/7 Sports. Sorry, people get mad when you call him 247. 24/7.
Are we the only people in the country who have called him 247 Sports? I've done it for 15 years.
Yeah.
People yell at me,
and I'm trying to be intentional about calling him 24/7 Sports. Has a really cool thing. If you go to the bottom of each class, it tells you their all-time commits. DJ Warner is number 1 for Kansas. Incredibly long, incredibly explosive. Seems like he's ready for it, and I know they are trying to replace some pass rushing production there. Right? Austin Booker went off to the NFL, led them in pressures last year. I felt like maybe coming off of that, they thought it could be like a committee approach to try to replace that production, and I think it probably still will be. But I don't know that I'd be shocked if it's DJ Warner as a true freshman is like being the guy who emerges as the most productive of that group because he's got incredible traits.
And it's going to be one of those. I mean, we're trying to set you up to sort of be prepared for names you're going to hear. Mm-hmm. This is going to be one of those where you're watching a game and they break in with the highlight, and it's going to be Kansas freshman DJ Warner with the strip sack, and his teammate picks it up and runs it back 38 yards for a Kansas touchdown.
Yeah.
That kind of thing is going to happen this year.
Yeah, I think so.
And maybe they'll break in with this guy, Cooper Cousins. I'll be like, Penn State freshman, just blocking his rear end off right here, which is what you would be in favor. If you were running the highlights, we'd be like, just like watch this guard pull on wide zone. Like, this is beautiful.
It'd be all pulls on like double teams. Yeah.
But Cooper Cousins getting a lot of talk at Penn State practice. I think they like their offensive line. They feel like they have 2, I think, guys they believe in at the tackle spots. They love their center, but is he their 6th offensive lineman at the very least as a true freshman?
It sounds like he has put himself in a position to be the first guy in at either center or guard.
Okay.
Right. So, and they do have better depth there. They needed to address that position. It seems like Penn State has done that. Cooper Cousins is a number 1 player in Pennsylvania, was a number 1 interior offensive lineman in the class of 2024. I think you want to get a guy like that on the field early. One, because he's earned it. James Franklin was talking about, like, I look out my office window and it's practically dark and there's one guy out there doing stuff and it's Cooper Cousins, like, working on pass sets. It's like,
man,
that's kind of weird, but I'm glad that he takes that initiative. I wish he would leave the facility from time to time, but like, so this kid has earned it. But also, like, when you get the number 1 player in the state, when you get the top guy in the country at his position, you want to be able to show future recruits, like, hey, when you come here on your stuff, we're going to get you on the field. Even if you're not a starter, we're going to get you on the field. So he's going to play. I don't think he's going to start because I think they're probably set with their 5, but he'll definitely be on the field this fall.
And you wanted to maybe throw in the Minnesota safety, who was a huge get for the Gophers, but did not early enroll. And that's just always a steeper climb to playing time as a true freshman.
Yeah, Coy Parrish, one of the best high school football players to come out of the state of Minnesota, probably like in the last decade. Another guy who's pretty high up on that list. If you look at the all-time commits for Minnesota, I think he's 2nd.
Okay.
And he's an in-state guy. Ohio State tried to flip him late. I think some other schools were in there trying to flip him late. So Minnesota did some really nice work to keep him in their class. But yeah, he did not enroll early. He's a multi-sport guy. I think he's basketball and track in addition to football. So he arrived in June. Actually had an injury during his high school track season, which I think set him back some too. So there's like some competition at safety at Minnesota. I don't think Coy Parrish is going to like win a starting job out of camp, but I think he will be in the mix and the depth. I think they'll get him on the field. I think he's a potential return man, maybe just kind of get the ball in his hands as an explosive young player who needs to play early. But he's another one who, if he's not starting immediately, maybe check back with us midseason and maybe he'll have earned a job by then.
No, and that's really like kudos to Minnesota. Kudos to that kid for deciding to stay home and play for your home state school. Yeah. And that's how you build something.
Definitely.
So yeah, keep his name front of mind. All right. We wanted to run through this. Is just there's so much more learning that takes place in the offseason now, but it's mostly related to the transfer portal. And again, just like trying to evaluate teams and understand rosters. And it's like, hey, we have 50 new guys. Okay, this is crazy. But these are the high school kids who picked schools and are going to do something right away. And that's sort of like, nobody's anti-transfer, but I kind of like it when you come out of high school, the fan base has gotten to know you a little bit through the recruitment process. I think sometimes we talk about recruiting and fans following recruiting in a negative way too much. And certainly, but I think that's a small minority who are like, whatever, bugging kids on social media. I think there really is something unique and special about an 18-month runway or a 12-month or a 6-month runway of I feel like I know this player, even though he's not even at my school yet. He's never played for my school, but I've been following him, and now he's here. That's different than being picked in the NFL draft, and then a couple months later you're in camp, right? So I get particularly excited about players like this because I think it is one of the cool things about college football.
I agree with you, and I also like the kind of the different ways you can get there, right? Like you take a Coy Parrish or a Cooper Cousins, it's like, man, the top player in our state, he wanted to stay home, or a Jeremiah Smith, which was a marathon for Ohio State to keep him, and like a lot of drama at the end. Ryan Day almost faints at the podium, was like, we got him. And then Dylan Raiola, who's Ohio State, who's Georgia, and like, you know what, I'm going to go to Nebraska. Like, I get he's the quarterback, which kind of endears him to the fan base sort of naturally anyway. But think of how much more it means to Nebraska fans that he decided to go to Nebraska after having the opportunities to go to places like Ohio State and Georgia, and then decide, like, no, what, Nebraska's for me instead.
Yeah, and maybe 5 of these 11 guys will transfer a year from now.
Yeah, that's the sport. What are you going to do?
But for now, it's wonderful.
It's great.
All right, what else do we love about college football? We're going to come back with 10 things that we're super excited about for this season as we gear up here on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis in the same room. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram at KOTNCFB. You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, but we think, especially once we get, fancy stuff, the YouTube experience, if you haven't tried it, we would recommend it. Even if you just put it on YouTube and then don't watch the whole time, then whenever you're feeling a little bit lonely, you can just look over and Philly Billy and French Billy are there for you. See our faces.
Yeah. We don't have to listen to us. Just see us. Our smiling faces will bring you comfort.
Just mute us.
Don't listen. Just look at us.
The best way to consume, oh man, hey, you guys watch Kings of the North? Oh, I watch it on mute. Doug makes all these crazy faces, but I don't actually have to listen to his voice or his opinions. It is the best way to do it. Brilliant. All right, we want to talk about what we are fired up about, excited about, why we love this. 10 things about college football that are just like, man, this sport and this season and probably like this area. Like it doesn't have to be only North, but like not all my things are only North. We're going to go back and forth. 10 things in 90 seconds. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. 10 things, 5 each. First thing you're super excited about.
Yeah, mine are more, I think, specific to this year.
Yep.
And the first thing for me is something we've talked about, but it's like the ball that's going to be played in the Big 12. I'm really excited about that. The parity that I think will exist in that league. And it's beyond this year too, because I think those programs, for better or worse, like it's unfortunate for them, I think they're in a position where their rosters could change rather dramatically year to year with transfer portal stuff that I think teams can rise and fall pretty quickly within that league too. So I know that there are things about the Big 12 sort of away from the football that kind of rub people the wrong way that we've discussed, like the private equity stuff. They're kind of out there pounding their chest, trying to get attention. And I get that's not for everybody, but the ball is going to be very good. And I'm super excited to watch the first year of that this year and how it grows and transforms in the coming years.
I am very curious to see how college football at large absorbs that. Mm-hmm. If they get steamrolled in perception and coverage by the Big Ten and the SEC, or if they're able to break through and people really care about the ball. We're going to care about the ball here, definitely, at least for the northern half of the Big 12. And that, frankly, is where the strength is, right? Arizona might be decent, but otherwise we're talking Utah, Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State, West Virginia that are going to be really interesting. We're going to talk about them here, but I hope they can. I hope they don't get steamrolled, and I hope they're not a footnote of like, oh yeah, this Big 12 game was 35-34 and incredibly well played. Let's get to Ole Miss.
Yeah.
God, punch a TV.
Not here.
So I'm going to restate that I'm super excited for the playoff, but I finally double checked this. This is just the thing that stands out to me. Covering this in 2006, when Ohio State went undefeated in the regular season, finished that regular season with arguably the greatest Ohio State-Michigan game ever, a 1-2 showdown. And then I've been referencing this a couple times, but I had the number wrong, and then did not play for 51 days. They played on November 18th, and they played in the national championship game on January 8th. That is crazy. And that's where we used to live. 7 weeks between the end of your season and your championship game. And we thought that it was a little long, but we thought it was kind of normal. The only game that mattered that was played in between then was the SEC championship game to make sure that Florida won and would make the national championship game. No other game that mattered was played for 51 days that had any effect on the season. You had random bowl games, but that was it. Now we will have 13 games that will super matter in that type of window. We're going to have 4 conference championship games that really matter. We're going to have 4 first-round playoff games, 4 quarterfinal games, 2 semifinals, and a national championship game. Instead of throwing December away, college football is going to own December and then into January. And we're only going to the 20th. The national championship game's on the 20th. It's 12 days later than it was in 2006. It's not a month later, but you're getting all this football packed in there that before we just took a nap. We took a 7-week nap after the pinnacle. And especially, and again, I want to talk about this more. That's the dividing line. That's the end of Northern college football and the rise of Southern college football is in that 51-day window. And it's like the North went to sleep and didn't wake up until last year. And we're not going to allow our sport to do that anymore. We're not going to vanish. And I'm going to keep saying it until we get to the playoff. But man, how much better is that 51 days? If you're like a 14-year-old watching this and you're like, what? You wouldn't even believe that could happen 51 days.
It's insane.
That was our world. That was our world. We had horses that pulled carts. Everybody had a garden and a donkey. No, it was 2006. There were computers in 2006. All right, what else are you excited for?
I am fired up for what I think is going to be a prolific and exciting and creative Ohio State rushing attack with Chip Kelly leading that way. Right. It's like I think of like teams that I'm excited about and then sort of areas of the game within those teams that I'm really excited about. And I think I put Ohio State's the potential of Ohio State rushing attack pretty close to the top of that list. I think this is going to be a somewhat drastically different offense at Ohio State that people have become accustomed to the last few years. They're going to throw it. They have tremendous receivers. I think Will Howard probably be an improved passer from what we saw at Kansas State to some degree. But this is an offense that's going to want to run the ball a lot with Will Howard, with Quinshad Judkins, with Travion Henderson. I think perhaps even with like Emeka Ibuka, who's a receiver that has some running back skill. Maybe Brandon Innes, a sophomore on that team who can do a little bit of the same stuff. And like Chip Kelly is the guy who I still think is among the best run game designers in college football. And now all he has to worry about is that. He's not a head coach anymore. All he has done, or all he will have done for like 7 months before the opener, is think of a million different ways for Ohio State to run the football. And I'm pretty excited about what that's going to look like.
So the window of Ohio State being a passing program lasted 7 years.
Yeah.
With the arrival of Ryan Day as the offensive coordinator in 2017, they started throwing the ball at JT Barrett that year, then Dwayne Haskins to Justin Fields to CJ Stroud to last year, 7 years. And now we're back to Woody Hayes, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer wanted to run the ball, brother. Like all that. And it was a nice run.
It was a good run.
Nice run for Ohio State.
We'll see if Julian's saying since the guy next year, maybe we'll get a reversion back.
But it's so fundamental. I mean, this is like, as much as everything is new in the Big Ten, the idea that the Big Ten and the North's best national championship hope is back to 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of stuff is you're salivating.
Well, I mean, look what won the national championship last year.
Yeah. All right. I'm excited for new coaches. 13 new coaches, new head coaches in the Power 68, 6 in the North, 6 in the South, 1 at UCLA, which is a California school. And I think the North hired well.
Yeah.
Like that, and they're so different. But Fran Brown at Syracuse, Bill O'Brien at Boston College, Curt Cignetti at Indiana, Sharon Moore at Michigan, Jonathan Smith at Michigan State, and Jed Fish at Washington. I think you can understand the thought processes for all 6 of those hires. And there's not a single one, which you certainly would have had in past years in the North, going like, I don't know what they were thinking there. Or like, man, they got down to their 7th choice, or they cheaped out because they didn't want to pay somebody. You know, some of them are first-year head coaches like Fran Brown. You have veteran guys who have led programs like Jonathan Smith and Jed Fish, and Sharon Moore promoting from within for the national champions, and then Curt Cignetti getting a chance to jump up from a lower level, and Bill O'Brien like coming back after being an NFL head coach. Such different resumes. But I'm fired up to see what all 6 of those programs look like. And like for now, tip of the cap to the North with the hiring processes.
It was a really good cycle. And even the one that I think perhaps people question the most is like Bill O'Brien. And I think it was less about fit and more about want to, right? Because I had those questions too. But I think, the interview we had with him, seeing the way he was like really energized in spring ball, like I don't have as many of those questions anymore. So I thought that was a good hire too.
And I do think the North hires are better. Manny Diaz at Duke, Brian Brennan at Arizona, Willie Fritz at Houston, Kellen DeBoer at Alabama, Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State, and Mike Elko at Texas A&M. I'm not saying they're bad. I'd take the North. All right, what else are you excited for?
Can we talk about Northern tight ends for a second, please? This position.
Running the ball. All right, so running the ball was number 2 for you. Number 3 is tight ends. Number 4 is going to be interior offensive line, and number 5 is going to be punters. That's my prediction.
Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next week. The depth of talent at tight end in the North is ridiculous. And I was just like going, so we want to do, I think we're going to do a preseason all North team, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about it a little bit. And I think maybe the number 1 tight end is obvious. It's probably Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa to spoil it at Michigan. Yeah. But man, there's some really good options at that position. Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa at Michigan. Mitchell Evans at Notre Dame. Brant Kuithe, hopefully healthy at Utah. Oronde Gadsden at Syracuse, coming off an injury last year where he basically lost his entire season. Probably going to be Syracuse's leading receiver. Jack Velling at Michigan State. Luke Lachey at Iowa, also coming off of an injury. Ty Warren at Penn State, really good. Gavin Bartholomew at Pitt. We talked about him a little bit. I think there's some upside there. Cole Taylor at West Virginia, probably better than people give him credit for. Thomas Fidone at Nebraska. Our guy Terrence Ferguson at Oregon. Like, there are a dozen tight ends in the North that I think could start anywhere in the country. And I'm really excited to see how the pecking order shakes out a little bit. Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa is really good. So maybe no one can knock him off of that pedestal. But if we look back at the end of the year, I think 8 of the best 10 tight ends in the country are going to be from teams we talk about.
And a lot of guys who feel like they're going to be the primary option in the passing games, whether it's Oronde Gadsden at Oregon or Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa or Jack Velling at Michigan State, Luke Lachey at Iowa. These guys are going to get the ball.
They're going to be very, very productive. Yeah.
All right. One thing I am excited about is I feel like there are 9 teams in the North that going into the season at least can be thinking about, we have a chance to have our best season since blank. And I feel like Michigan and Washington sort of laid that down last year, what that looks like. I've said it a million times. I'm not the only one saying it. I think Michigan last year had its best season ever in its 144th season of college football. 15-0 national championship. And then all the things but for a Michigan fan, you got to be like an underdog and the world is against us. And you went 15-0 and you were super talented. And then everybody left. Washington, I think, had its 3rd best season ever last year. They had a share of the national championship in 1991. And in 1994, they went 11-1, won the Orange Bowl. And maybe should have won the national championship, but people voted for BYU that year. So, but I think last year is next. So it's one of their 3 best seasons ever in 100 plus years, right? So and the best one since 91. So that's a while. It's a generation. So that's what I'm talking about. Here are the teams that I think have a chance to do something like that. I think West Virginia has a chance for its best season since going 11-2 in 2007 and finishing number 6. Rutgers has a chance for its best season since going 11-2 in 2006 and finishing number 12. Kansas has a chance for its best season since going 12-1 in 2007 and finishing number 7. Kansas State has a chance for its best season since 2002 when it went 11-2 and finished number 7. Utah has a chance for its best season since going 13-0 and finishing number 2 in 2008. Oregon has never won a national title, and I think has a chance to have a Michigan type, this is the greatest season we've ever had. I think it is on the table for Ohio State to have its greatest season it's ever had. Ohio State has 3 undefeated national champions among its 8 national champs in 54, 68, and 02. 68 is special with the Super Softs. 02 is special with this team that came out of nowhere and won a miracle game against Miami. But in terms of dominance end to end, you see it coming, I think Ohio State has that chance. I think Syracuse has a chance to have its 2nd best season in the last 23 years, the only other one being 10-3 in 2018 when they finished number 15. And then I think Iowa State and Indiana also have chances to have their 2nd or 3rd best season in 25 years. Indiana finished number 12 in the COVID year. Yeah. Iowa State went 9-3, finished number 9 in the COVID year. But other than that, that was like probably Iowa State's best season ever.
Yes.
And it was Indiana's best season in 50 plus years. And I don't know that these seasons will be better, but only next to that. So anyway, on our first show, I might do a manifesto, a Northern manifesto of what we're trying to do here. One of the number one things we're trying to do is help fans enjoy their teams. Mm-hmm. I think we have a chance to have some happy Northern fan bases, maybe also disappointed Northern fan bases. But right now, this offseason, this preseason, I think there's like a bunch of teams that are jacked up and their fans are jacked up. And how great is that?
It's awesome. I also wonder too, for like the Iowa State and Indiana examples in particular, that 2020 season was just so weird because it wasn't uniform. Like obviously you loved it when those teams had those seasons. I'm not saying
and fans couldn't be there.
Yeah, you weren't there to enjoy it, and the world was, so like this will be something very different if those teams have successful seasons. I think. Even if the records don't quite match what the records were those years.
Yeah, hope is good. Now, hope can lead to disappointment, but I think I'd rather be hopeful and then be disappointed than be like, we're gonna stink again this year. Sometimes people want to be surprised, but I don't know, people get really disappointed. Yeah. I think it's fun to have hope.
So do I.
Okay. What else?
I'm excited about I don't know, it's the second year quarterbacks, but it's like the next wave of quarterbacks in the sport. There's a lot of conversation, I think, about the older kind of draft eligible quarterbacks this year and whether or not that class is any good. I think this next wave of guys, the quarterbacks in the 2023 recruiting class, a few of them are stepping into starting jobs this year, starting with the ones in the North, like Avery Johnson at Kansas State is one. Aiden Childs, obviously, Michigan State is one. A team we don't talk about a ton, but is of the North, is Boise State without Malachi Nelson, the transfer from USC. I think he's an interesting second-year guy. And then there's obviously like Jackson Arnold and Nico Iamaleava. Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
I feel like the pronunciation of his last name changed from high school to college, so I'm trying to figure that out. But that next crop, I think, to like lead us into the next couple of years of college football, I am waiting to see which of those guys might kind of like force his way to the front of that conversation, and frankly, probably be one of the faces of the sport for the next 2-3 years.
That was one of mine too.
Nice.
And it is that 23 class, because the 2022 class, which is third-year guys right now, has not really popped. We're talking about the 2023 guys who, as second-year starters, have a chance to really do something. And again, in the North, it's headlined by Avery Johnson at Kansas State and Aiden Childs at Michigan State. Yeah. But like I looked at like the top 40 quarterbacks from the class of 2022, and again, we had a quarterback class in 2020 where Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and DJ Uiagalelei were the top 3 quarterbacks, and they all like hit. Mm-hmm. In different ways. But still DJ played and had good moments at Clemson, right?
Mm-hmm. And Oregon State.
Yeah. So when you look at, that class of 22 is Cade Klubnik at Clemson was number 1, Connor Wegman at Texas A&M is number 2. And some people are high on him. If you like the Aggies this year, he's part of the reason
people
why.
are high on him, but I also think people have been somewhat disappointed with Cade Klubnik thus far.
I agree with that. Yeah. And then Drew Aller. And then those are the only guys like in the top 29. The next 3 best guys are Alex Orji, who was number 30 in that class at Michigan, Rocco Becht, who was number 33 in that class at Iowa State, and Noah Fafita, who's number 38 in that class in Arizona. But like that's a lot of guys who didn't hit. It just means the second-year quarterbacks have a chance to do something now that gets us really jacked up for next year.
Yeah, and there's a couple guys too, if you look in that class, who may have an opportunity to start next year too. So that whole 23 class might be pretty well represented going into the 2025 season. So
then this is my last one. And it is a reminder that football players are people. And in a lot of ways, they're kids still. And I don't want to, I'm old, I'm a dad. I don't want to be dismissive of them as men and adults, but man, college is a time of transition. And so I think it's just a reminder for all of us. It doesn't mean we're going to pull punches. It doesn't mean you don't try to hold people accountable and, but we're not out to get after 19-year-olds. But just 2 guys who have a chance to be really important in Northern football. And these are just front of mind for me. And I know I wouldn't imagine. I know there are other guys who have gone through real tragedy in their lives and are still getting out there on the field and doing what it takes and often like using football and using their teammates as a way to like help them through terrible times. Carnell Tate at Ohio State, who has a chance to be a star this year as a second-year receiver. His mother, Ashley, was murdered on August 25th, 2023 in Chicago. We know that's been talked about at Ohio State, but just think about your Carnell Tate and you're trying to get through your freshman season and your mother's killed.
Yeah.
So when you watch Carnell Tate play football this year, just understand what this young man has gone through. And Joe Royer at Cincinnati, who's a former Ohio State player who lost his mother to cancer on September 27th, 2022, and dealt with that as a college football player. I was at Cincinnati camp. They are super fired up about Joe Royer. And then they had a scrimmage in Nippert Stadium, and Joe Royer showed out and has a chance to be, I think, the most dynamic part of that Cincinnati passing game. He was injured at Ohio State. He lost his mom. He's now transferred. And it's just a reminder of I think he's just starting to show what kind of football player he can be because he was dealing with real life stuff. So just a reminder, I think it's for myself as much as anything, that there are real people going through real things and then still getting out there and trying to chase their dreams. But those are two guys I think that everybody watching the show can root for this year in Carnell Tate and Joe Royer.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you're going to make me seem like a jerk with my last one.
Oh, are you going to rip people now?
Because I'm getting excited about the potential of people getting fired.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay.
But you can't fire players.
No. We're not firing players.
We're firing millionaire coaches.
We're gonna enjoy some good old fashioned Southern Schadenfreude in week one.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Okay.
We absolutely can root for Northern players who are grinding out real life things and still rip millionaire Southern guys.
Great. August 31st, 3:30 p.m. week one in Gainesville, Florida. The Florida Gators are going to play the Miami Hurricanes, and one of those teams and those fan bases are going to absolutely hate themselves after that game. That is one of the better sort of anxiety bowls that I can remember.
Oh, that's a good name
to open a season. And it'll be nice to watch one of those programs melt down after one of them loses.
Are you calling loser fired? Not immediately, but by the end of the year, Mario Cristobal,
Mario Cristobal, I think, has an opportunity to bounce back from it, but it'll be an uncomfortable September, I think, for Mario Cristobal if Miami goes to Gainesville and loses. And I think people want to fire Billy Napier already. So if they lose to Miami in their opener, he might not make it to the next week, maybe, but probably will. But he is definitely in position for an in-season firing. I don't think Mario is, but people want Miami to get to the playoff this year, and starting your season with a loss to Florida would not be great.
Yeah. I agree with that.
So I'm looking forward to that one.
Okay. But it's not a list. It's just that one in particular.
It's just that game.
I thought you were going to start with, here are the 10 Southern coaches I would like to see fired.
No, we could make that list, but this one, it was like kind of sitting right there, right in the middle of the first Saturday of the college football season. There's really no other big game in that time slot, so we can all kind of sit down and watch Miami, Florida at 3:30 and just hope for chaos.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's funny. It's like I'm so locked in on like what the biggest Northern games are each week. I'm just ignoring everything else. So it's like I'm not super aware of that. Like Florida, Miami play in week one. Clemson, Georgia play in week one, but I guess that's prime time, right?
No, that's actually the ABC. I think noon ABC is Clemson, Georgia, and then this game is right after that.
Yeah. Oh, then I won't be watching Clemson, Georgia because I'll be watching West Virginia,
Penn State is at noon. Yeah.
Okay.
On Fox.
All right. That's what we're excited for. And now we're going to talk about overrated and underrated. When we come back on Kings of the North, I will be joined by Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews, talking about some overhyped and underhyped teams for this college football season. Next on KOTN. Joined now on Kings of the North by Brett Ciancia, the owner, creator, writer, author, editor, founder, and general man about town when it comes to Pick Six Previews, a preseason magazine.
There it is.
How long have you been doing this, Brett?
Yeah, thanks. 12 years, Pick Six Previews launched 12 years ago. This is the third hard copy, though. So the hard copy magazine, third year for that. Really excited. It's the offseason of change, the most change we've ever seen with the super conferences, the playoff tripling in size, all the transfer activity. So excited to break it down with you.
12 years. So you started it like as a fourth grade project. That's when you started this.
Pretty much. Right. Definitely on the younger side. We launched it when me and Mike Nawaziat when we were in college. Since then, it's become a one-man show. But 2012, as a freshman at Boston College.
You Zuckerberg, your partner, man. You were like, get out. I'm Zuckerberg. You're the Winklevoss twins. This is mine now. I respect it. So Brett, he does good work. The proof's in the pudding. He knows what's up. And we are here primarily to talk about with now the AP preseason poll out, which I don't care about the preseason polls, but it is an acknowledgement, an analysis of perception. And so from that standpoint, I think it matters. But of course, the other thing that happens, and you know this, Brett, is that guys like you influence the preseason polls. Because guess what? I used to be a voter. It's like, what do you do? It's like, better get the magazines I trust and see what they said. Yep. So it's like, okay, well, duh. The top 4 in the AP, or like your top 4, is like, what do you think? It's like you help people arrive at their vote. So there's not a huge difference, but we want to talk about where some of the differences are. But are you always curious when the polls come out to see how close they are to what you said?
Yeah, for sure. And part of what I do, I really try and hide from the way too early predictions and all the national media up until I publish mine. And it's not out of arrogance, but I want to come at it with an original idea. You know, all my original research, I want to just publish. And then, of course, I catch up, and I love reading everybody's work. But that's why I come at this. There are some differences, and you'll see that when we go over. But that's coming out after, months and months of original research. So, I'm catching up on everybody else's predictions. I'm seeing that some of mine are a little bit more shocking than I thought they were when I published. But we'll break that down and discuss.
What I like to do is I like to have other people do original research and then steal it.
There you go. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some overrated and underrated teams. Let's talk about underrated, first of all. Some teams that maybe came in the poll a little lower than you had them. Certainly one that comes up is you had Utah 8th, and the AP has Utah 12th. I'm more with you. I think Utah has a chance to be excellent. Why are you maybe higher on Utah than the average Bear?
Yeah, well, Utah is my pick to win a wide open Big 12. There's a lot to like from Utah too. And, I cover them for KSL.com over in the fall. I do game previews, game recaps, but it really let me see what was happening there last year with the injuries. It's the most injured program I've ever seen in my life. Like I said, 12 years doing Pick 6 previews. I went back and tracked it. It was 157 games lost to injury last year from their 2 deep. And these aren't just, random backups. This was their starting quarterback, Cam Rising, their All-American caliber tight end, Brant Kuithe, best linebacker, Lander Barton, and on and on and on, both running backs, backup quarterbacks, everybody. So I almost had to throw out a lot of those offensive stats last year from Utah, take it with a grain of salt, and look at what they have coming back. And what I like is what I'm calling the boomerang effect of all those injured starters from last year. They're back healthy, but then all those younger guys that were thrown into action ahead of schedule last year, they're also back as veterans. So a double whammy effect there. I love their coaching staff. I've been hoping that they would make it into the 14 bracket for a long time. They deserve it. I think this is their year to get it done with the automatic bid from the Big 12. So I have them 4 spots ahead of the AP at 8th.
I'm stealing a boomerang effect, by the way. Also.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a perfect representation. They're due for, a statistical gain, however you want to phrase it, but everyone's back. I mean, Rising and Kuithe, it's hard to imagine. I feel like I've done the same Utah talk for 7 straight years, but they're back in Salt Lake City. They play hard-nosed defense, and I think they're going to get it done in a wide-open conference.
On my next show, I will say, I have coined the term boomerang effect to describe what I think is going to happen with Utah this year. I like it. I think there's a lot to it. And I think it's one of those things. I don't like silver linings because I just think sometimes things are bad. And I don't want to look for the good. I just want to wallow in misery. But they're so injured. Younger guys have to play, and we wind up with where they are now. So I'm not going to call what happened to Utah last year a silver lining. It just stunk that Brant Kuithe and Cam Rising were hurt all year. But here we are now. Can I ask you about 2 other teams in the North that you have a little higher than the AP poll? Yeah. And it is an absolute, on one of our more recent shows, I talked about Nebraska, Colorado in week 2, I think is like a pivot point game for those programs. Maybe more from a perception standpoint, but this one I think is a pivot point game from a playoff standpoint in week 2, and it's Iowa State. You have Iowa 20th, and the AP poll has them 25th. You have Iowa State 27th, and the AP poll had them 30th. Okay, it's the receiving votes, but you can do the math. Yeah. You can go 26. What I do? 26, 27, 28. And they're 30th. So you're a little higher on both those teams. I am also a little higher on both those teams. I think Iowa, there's a run. This is just what happens. This is why we have this show. When people don't know what to do with their vote, they just vote for like random SEC team
because they plug in the SEC.
Their default. Why Texas A&M is 18th and Iowa is 25th.
Yeah.
They're the 20th, and Texas A&M is 20th in the AP and 25th and Iowa's 25th. Why Iowa's 5 spots lower than Texas A&M? I have no idea. I have no idea what anybody would base that on.
Right.
So, and I like Iowa State as not even a dark horse. It's kind of like on the edges of the Big 12 playoff discussion. What do you think of both the Hawkeyes and the Cyclones? And I think whoever wins that week 2 game, suddenly they get the edge, they get the benefit of the doubt in any playoff discussion. If Iowa State, say, gets to the Big 12 title game and loses, but they have a win over Iowa, that's going to be huge for them. If Iowa plays what people view as an easy schedule and they're a 10-2 team, but they have this win over Iowa State, and Iowa State winds up being pretty good, that could be the difference between Iowa getting in the last spot in the playoff or not. Hawkeyes and Cyclones, what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Well, these are two teams talking King of the North, where the North almost gets overlooked a lot of times by the national media, a lot of the Southern voters. These are two teams that they're proven commodities. You know what you're getting from them. They're very tough, physical programs. They've had long tenured head coaches now with Matt Campbell and Kirk Ferentz. It's these proven formulas. They know how to win games. You know, one of my favorite quotes from Kirk Ferentz, the reporters keep asking him yards per game, points per game. You're not getting it done. He replies with wins per game. That's what he's good at. He can do wins per game. So he knows how to get it done up there. So what I like about Iowa this year, their swarm NIL really defended their best players from the portal and the NFL, brought them all back on defense except for Cooper DeJean. I think it's 10 starters back or 9 starters back on defense. Could be the best linebacker duo in the country. 4 guys landed on my preseason All-American defense. So you know what you're getting on defense, one of the best in the country. I think offensively, you're going to see them at least get some kind of gain, some statistical gain from the coordinator change and having a Power 5 quarterback now there with Cade McNamara and Sullivan from Northwestern, 2 former starters in the Big Ten. So it's got to improve offensively. And lastly, they are veteran in the trenches now, 4 starters back on the offensive line. So I like them with a very manageable schedule. You hinted at, they're one of the only teams in the Big Ten to avoid, I think they play 1 out of the top 5 in the Big Ten. So
just Ohio State.
Yeah, throw that Ohio State, even call it a loss right now, but I think they're going to be favored in 10 of those 11 other games, if not all 11 for that matter. So yeah, I really like Iowa. It was my best bet of the season when it opened up at 7.5 for the win total. I mean, that was just, I thought they're going to hit 8, 9, could even hit 10. So I really like Iowa. Iowa State, similarly, it's a proven defense. It's a little bit of an outlier scheme. They run that 3-3-3 dime stack with Coach Haycock. It's proven. It's what works in the Big 12. They're very veteran there as well. And they're going to have a lot of returning production on offense this year. Last year was really a youth movement for them, starting a freshman quarterback, Rocco Becht, freshman running back with Sama, all of it's back. So look for them to get that returning production boost and could push for a top 25 spot. I had them barely outside there at 27th, I believe, but they're right there in the mix of a really crowded Big 12.
It's going to be a fun game. It's going to be
physical game. Yeah.
Huge Cyhawk game. Week 2. All right. Let's talk a little bit about, also, you're so high on Miami that you're on the yacht with Nevin Shapiro. Miami loves you, but Miami can cram it. I don't care about Miami, so I'm not going to ask you about them. But I will just say, if Miami makes the playoff or like makes the semifinals or anything, they're going to have a parade for you because you have them 10th and the AP poll has them 19th. So I possibly could think that is just you wanting to get a parade in Miami.
Hey, if they're throwing out parades, I'll take it. But no, that was the result of months of research. We'll see if it's true. But that's one of those teams you got to be.
South Beach. Months of research. Want to go to South Beach?
I'll gladly take it. I'll gladly take it. We'll see.
All right, let's talk about overrated teams. It's not exactly the right word, but Michigan is one of the most fascinating teams to analyze from a football standpoint. There's all this other stuff. Yeah. And I actually think has a chance to maybe affect the football. I think sometimes it does They already used the whole world hates us stuff to go 15-0. So I don't know. That'd be a heck of a thing. Maybe it's a reset on the whole world hates us. The head coach left. So many of their players have like, let's run that back. Us against the world. It worked last time, and maybe they go 11-1. I don't know. But I just think maybe if this stuff hovers, it maybe just makes it harder to have tunnel vision. Plus, their schedule's really hard, but they do have a lot back on defense. Alex Orji remains one of the most interesting guys in college football. I think there's possibly a Jalen Milroe comparison to make there, that we didn't know exactly what Jalen Milroe was going to be at Alabama last year. Alabama didn't know because they benched him in September, and then we're like, nope, nobody's better. Let's play him. And they made the playoff with him. So I think there's a little bit of that energy there. You have Michigan 12th. The AP poll has them 9th. So you're 3 spots lower on them. Like, what are your Wolverine vibes right now?
Yeah, well, tremendous season last year, 15-0. They made it 3 straight over Ohio State, which was shocking. And you really saw them wear down the Buckeyes on that final drive. You know, Ohio State held strong until that final ball control drive. But credit Michigan. They got it done in overtime at the goal line against Alabama. And then they thrashed Washington, probably their best overall performance. So incredible season. I'm not taking away from that. But you fast forward to 2024. Now, Harbaugh's gone. All 10, I think 10 starters are gone on offense. The whole offensive line, which was their strength, all 5 starters are gone, plus their 6-man, all of them drafted. So it's a lot of firepower lost from the offense. I think it's only Colston Loveland, the tight end, coming back in terms of returning starters. Defense, you're right, does bring a lot back, and it still should be a top 10 unit defensively. But I think just too much change, and they already hit that peak of the sport. It's going to be hard mentally to get back and refocus. You talked quarterback situation. It's like a 5-man race still. So a real big question mark for me here in August. And schedule too. Yeah, Texas in the non-conference, that's a team fresh off of a playoff bid and in the AP top 5. And, Ohio State on the schedule. And yeah, so I have them finishing outside the top 10. I had them 12th, which doesn't seem that much further down than the AP. It's only 3 spots. But when you're talking about a 12-team playoff with the 11 top Power 5 teams, you have the non-AQ getting number 12, but really 11 is that magic number. So AP has them in, I have them out as the last team out of that playoff bracket. So that is a big difference.
They play 3 of the 4 best teams.
Yeah.
They play 3 of the top 4 teams in Ohio State, Texas, and Oregon. It's crazy how hard their schedule is. So that's the thing that I keep going back to with them, is like, they could be really good and still not have the record to get them in, unless the committee is super open-minded to like, man, you are 9-3, but you played 3 of the 5 top seeds and you hung around with them, and then you took care of business in the rest of your schedule. They just don't have any wiggle room. Nobody's getting in at 8-4.
Right.
They could be a fascinating 9-3 test case, because I think they could be a 9-3 team that is definitively better than some 11-1 or 12-2 teams. They just played a crazy schedule. And what does the committee do with that? We've talked about that on this show. I'm fascinated to see what the committee does, because I don't know which way they would go.
Right. And we also don't know how they're going to value conference title game losers. Say you go 10-2 regular season, you get into that title game, and then you lose a 3rd game there. How does that stack up to a 9-3 Michigan or a 9-3 runner-up? It's so many new variables. We're about to have a fascinating finish. But
if they penalize title game losers, I'm marching on the headquarters.
I know, but we've seen them penalize undefeated teams before that won the conference title game with Florida State. So who knows? Their logic changes every week, every year. It's a whole new ball game now with 12 though. So you got to just give them no way to wiggle out of it. You got to win your conference, and you get that automatic bid in the bye. Otherwise, it's going to be all resumes and buzzwords, and you know what.
I am super excited for the 12-team playoff. Are you not? Are you not excited for the 12-team playoff?
There's pros and cons. I'm not 100% pro on it. I think that with the 4-team setup, I really like the regular season being important and keeping all that nostalgia. But I didn't like the selection process. So I would have liked more of a BCS formula, have an automatic, formula that everyone agreed to.
Don't come on this show and be in favor of robots and computers.
It's better than a hidden committee with all kinds of affiliations and throwing eye test and buzzwords at us.
Anti-human. No. You're anti-human.
Maybe
Are you
so,
a robot?
Maybe so. But no, with the 12-teamer, to your point, there are some pros too. And now I say it takes away from the regular season. That's not all entirely true, because now you pick up some of those extra games that might have been, say, a number 10 versus a number 12 or a number 13 versus a number 15. That now becomes do or die. That becomes getting back into the playoff talk. So I think you're going to have more fan bases involved. You're going to have new faces in the bracket, and the home games on campus sites is going to be incredible. I can't wait for that opening round. If my bracket holds, if we'd have home games in South Bend, Autzen Stadium, Oregon, you get to see Alabama head north. That'd be pretty cool. Where else? Texas could host. Ole Miss, the Grove could host. So it's going to be awesome. So yeah, more pros than cons.
You also acknowledge that perhaps Alabama losing the greatest coach in college football history might be a negative for them. So the AP poll is just like, it's Bama. I don't think that's what it should be. There are 5 in the AP poll. You have Bama 9. Is that? I think that is an appropriate acknowledgement of, well, they're still good, but they had the greatest edge in college football for the last 15 years because they had that dude, Nick Saban, running the show. Is that why you're a little lower on Bama?
Yeah, a little bit there. Some coach transition. They lost their top 2 running backs, their top 3 receivers. Defense took a little bit of a slide, but it's such a talented roster. There's 5 stars everywhere. It's pretty phenomenal when you go position by position. It's just the best players in the country still there. So, and it's funny how it shakes out. Like I said, I try and ignore a lot of the way too early polls and the other national polls until I publish mine. I thought putting Alabama 9th was actually positive. I was thinking, okay, there's still going to be a playoff team. I still think it's a solid program without Coach Saban. A lot of respect for Kalen DeBoer. So by putting him 9th, I thought I was being pretty charitable. Comes out, I look like a hater compared to 5th in the country that the AP and most of the other polls have. So, I guess at 9th, I thought it was positive. It turns out it looks like I'm a hater. But no, it's a talented team. Jalen Milroe was a Heisman candidate last year. I think he takes another gain under Kalen DeBoer. You saw what he was able to do with Michael Penix at Washington. So really talented team. And right when you talk about losing some starters, you look at who they have in the door. 5 top 100 running backs and 5 top 100 receivers from the recruiting ranks. So it's just sheer firepower over there.
You also don't like Missouri as much as the rest of the country. Missouri, 11th in the AP poll, 19th in your rankings. Missouri is like a border school with us. They just chose to be in the SEC. They cast their lot. But I think they're intriguing. Obviously, they have one of the best receivers in the country. They have a lot back. I think Drinkwitz is a coach that people believe in. Why are you not quite as high on Mizzou?
Yeah, not making many friends in Columbia, Missouri this year. But no, I think I really like their offense still. I think that was a special banner season last year. 11 wins, a New Year's 6 win over Ohio State. But what doesn't get talked about enough, how important that defense was to them last year. I think it was a balanced attack. It was great offense and great defense. I think losing Blake Baker, their defensive coordinator, who got poached by LSU with, I think it was the record all-time highest coordinator contract in football history, $2.5 million. So they had the brains of the operation poached there. And I think 8 starters gone, most of them to the pros on defense. So while the offense will remain special with Brady Cook and an All-American Luther Burden, I think the defensive losses is going to catch up to them there. And in a really top-heavy conference, that shakes out with them, I think, 7th or 8th, way down the ladder from where they were last year.
Quoting from your magazine, I ended up as one of the only national writers to defend the 4-team playoff bracket size. In terms of bracket size, I always felt that a 4-team playoff still protected the importance of the regular season. I just would ask you, Brett, you're a young man. You're still in high school, right? You said you're still in high school.
Pretty
You're
much.
So young. You're so young. Embrace the idea that a single loss does not have to be fatal to a team. And I've said it to everybody, and this is just an old man passing down some wisdom. Don't let devastation be the thing you like most about college football. That, I miss the devastating loss that ruined a season. And give them a mulligan. It's still gonna be all good teams. That's all, right? It's not a good way to think of it.
That's one way.
You love robots and devastation. That's what Brett's all about.
Yeah, I'm a numbers guy. No, but I do think this. I like the finality of a head-to-head matchup in October or November. I like it being decisive. I like Ohio State, Michigan determining a do-or-die scenario. I like, if you look at probably the best regular season game this year, it looks like it's going to be Ohio State at Oregon. And that looks like it could be the first of 3 matchups in this new model. It's going to be the era of the rematch. So that might have been the biggest, game of the year, game of the century terminology back in the day. Now that's just the first of 3. So no, I like, there's pros and cons to it. I would prefer the 4. With 12, it brings a lot of new angles to the game. I think there's going to be some positives, but you lose a little bit of that juice in some of those top-notch games in October. So we'll see. It's going to be a lot of rematches in that bracket.
Trade some October juice for some December and January juice. You are going to be a wash. It's the juice is going to be frozen on you. It's going to be a juice sickle. We're all going to be slurping on juice sickles in January when it comes to college football. So I'll have you back on then. And then we'll say, Brett, pretty good.
Oh, I'm going to be super excited for it. Oh, I'm going to be really excited for it.
Okay.
That December 20th Friday night game to kick it off, and then you have a triple header on the 21st, all on campus. It's going to be incredible scenes. I know out here in Pennsylvania, Penn State, they're winterizing their stadium just in case they host a playoff game. Imagine some snow falling in Happy Valley and seeing an SEC runner-up have to come up north to the Kings of the North, right? So it's going to be pretty cool. So, pros and cons, but yeah, I can't wait for it.
I like to check in on the team. Like Wisconsin's winterizing too. It's like, who's winterizing and who's like,
yeah,
we don't need to winterize. Like, come on.
Right.
But like if you're winterizing, you're all about it. He's Brett Ciancia. He's been doing this since it was a project in kindergarten. And his kindergarten teacher said, find a thing that you love and make a big book about it. And he did, and here he is 12 years later. He's almost done with high school. I just get jealous of people who look young. That's all, Brett. But I understand that you're a man.
Yep.
You're a grown
appreciate
person.
it.
I'm just kidding. You're a grown man who does, to quote your book, thousands of hours of research, right? 1,000 hours of research. That's a lot of research.
Full year project. Yep.
That's crazy, man. Hey, and then I just swoop in and I'm like, oh, cool. Thanks for the magazine. I'm stealing all this.
Yep. Bang for your buck. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Thank you.
What a scam I'm running. So, Brett, when people like just to keep tabs on you, keep tabs on your work, figure out, hey, I want to get the Pick Six preview for next year. How can they follow?
Yeah, pick6previews.com is the only way to get it. And right now we're shipping out the hard copies. We have the digital option as well. So if you buy the hard copy, you also get the digital emailed over immediately. And then on Twitter, it's Pick Six Previews, all spelled out, Pick Six Previews on Twitter. And that's pretty much it. So it'll be, wall-to-wall coverage from now till the national title game. It's every day on Twitter. But on pick6previews.com, we have testimonials from the college game day guys, from Scott Van Pelt, and a lot to see on their sample pages. So you can check it out. But always love our conversations, Doug, and best of luck with Kings of the North. I'll be checking in, and hey, I'm based in Pennsylvania, like I said, so I'm definitely a northern guy. So trying to get some coverage to the north. It's an SEC dominated sport, but trying to balance the playing field here with coverage. So my book has all 70 Power 5 teams in there. Power 4, I should say. I already caught myself here, a season of change, but 70 Power 4 in there, all one-man show. It's all me.
Awesome, man. Thanks for your time. Thanks for doing the work so I don't have to. Yep. And we appreciate you having on Kings of the North, and we certainly will have you back. Thanks, Brett.
All right. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
So thanks to Brett for that. We're thinking maybe neon sign. I have a million Instagram ads for neon signs.
Yeah, I think a neon sign. We were kicking around like mini helmets. Mini helmets are incredibly expensive.
Could we get a mini helmet sponsor?
Maybe. Someone like, is it Riddell or Riddle? It's Riddle, right?
I think it's Riddle.
Yeah. Why are your mini helmets $40? And also, can you send us 28 of them?
Because there's 28 teams. Now we are ignoring half the sport, but still 28 times 40 is a lot of money.
Yeah, especially if you want to get into the alternate helmets, because there's like 6 different Oregon options.
Oh my God. Yeah, we're getting one Oregon helmet. So we will be back together sometimes on Kings of the North. Sometimes we'll still be separate. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we will have guests on. But sometimes we'll have this look. I think we'll probably have this look as we get towards our live shows. Monday, not the first week, but after that, will be a recap of all of our games show. I think we'll do that together.
Yeah.
And then Thursday's show will be our preview and our picks for all of our games. I think we'll do that together. Mm-hmm. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday, there might be more moving parts, people in different places, having more guests, that kind of thing. We want to have players join us, that kind of thing. So, but get used to this setup and get excited for the neon sign. Thanks as always to our producer, Mike Urostowski. Thanks again to Brett Ciancia for joining us here from our new KOTN setup. He is Bill Landis. I am Doug Lesmerises. And that was Kings of the North.